My name is Dr. Hyman Johnson. I'm an emeritus professor. I've taught at Antioch University in Santa Barbara as well as at UCSB, and I've also served on that campus as an administrator for several years. I've spoken at commemorations for Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King many times on the UCSB campus and throughout the community, including talks at this particular Eternal Flame. This memorial, which sits on the lawn of Buchanan Hall on the campus of UCSB, was gifted to the campus by the student class of 1969. The real focus of this Eternal Flame was on Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King. But of course, we also honored the legacies of President John F. Kennedy and Senator Robert F. Kennedy. As far as we know, there are only two such Eternal Flame memorials that honor Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King. One is in Atlanta, Georgia, and the other one is right here on the UCSB campus. On this particular memorial, there are 3 plaques with quotes by John Kennedy, Robert Kennedy, and Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King. Senator Kennedy. I think that the motive that should guide all of us, that should guide all mankind, is to take the savageness of man and make gentle the life of the world. President John F. Kennedy. Let us take the first step. Let us, if we can, step back from the shadows of war and seek out the ways of peace. And if that journey is 1,000 miles or even more, let history record that we in this land at this time took the first step. And then, of course, Dr. King. The large house in which we live demands that we transform the worldwide neighborhood into a worldwide brotherhood. Together we must learn to live as brothers, or together we will be forced to perish as fools. Each of these 3 quotes points to Dr. King's 4 universal principles, the first being peace, then love, then justice, and finally, the interconnectedness among all of humankind. He often talked about the brotherhood of man and that we should all live as brothers. We must honor this legacy of the Eternal Flame and what is represented here. Many are good at offering good words, but good words require dedication. This is a critical time in our history, and each year we celebrate this legacy of Dr. King. So let us be dedicated and let us do the work that will, in truth, bring the results that we seek.
My name is Sharon Hoshida, and I've lived in Santa Barbara since 1970. But I started my career as a university student at University of California, Santa Barbara, in 1965. I came back and started working in 1971 to 2008, having a 37-year career at the University of California. Working with students has been the most rewarding aspect of my life. Being a part of that campus community and energy, and especially during the times that I was there, was a very volatile time in our country. It was a time of unrest, but it was also a time of awakening. It was a time in which people began to see that there was a flaw in that American dream that we were all sold during the 50s. And people began to realize that that American dream didn't really exist for all of us. In the late 60s, around 1968, it was a year of a real turnaround for a huge generation. I mean, we've always heard about the baby boomer generation being that big bubble going through the boa constrictor of American life. And it's true, there were many, many, many of us awakening to the fact that everything wasn't that American dream that we were taught to believe. In fact, what we started realizing was that the racial injustice in our country was overwhelming. It was beginning to awaken in the minds and experiences of Black Americans, certainly after the Second World War. But when the people of my generation, people in the baby boomer generation, started understanding and doing the reading and thinking about things in a new way, it was a national awakening across the issues of racial justice, women's rights. The Vietnam War was a huge catalyst, and then out of that was also the recognition that the environment that we all share is something that we needed to protect. So it was that energy that grew out of the strife in our streets after the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King that really brought people to a national awareness that things had to change. The campus of the University of California, Santa Barbara, has been a local epicenter for all racial, social, and political movements in our community. When things happen in the greater world, people gather. We tend to gather at that campus, and it has held a sense of community for us in a way that doesn't exist in other places necessarily. Being able to gather at some place like the Eternal Flame on our campus and seeing that that came out of a period of awakening for the Black students when we had the takeover of the campus computer system, which in itself was a stroke of brilliance, understanding that that was the heartbeat of the campus. So the whole floor of North Hall that housed the campus computer system was taken over by the Black students with demands that there needed to be recognition and change in the system the way it existed. And out of that movement came the energy and the coalition of the vision to create something long-lasting, certainly after the assassinations of 1968, Martin Luther King in April, and Robert F. Kennedy in June, that something had to be done. And having this come out as a symbol of peace as opposed to violence, revenge, having this as a lasting symbol to commemorate the work of the three men who are martyred, but also to be a way for us to mark that point in history and hopefully consider that as a turning point that we never go back.
Good day. My name is Aaron Edward de Santiago Jones. Many people know me as AJ. I am an alum of UC Santa Barbara. I received my bachelor's degree in Black Studies and Political Science. I've also received a master's degree in education. I'm finishing a PhD in education. And I currently work as the director of the Educational Opportunity Program at UCSB, having completed about 16 years of service with the university. I wanted to just share a few words with regards to the Eternal Flame. Over the many years in my 30 plus 1 years of relationship with the University of California, Santa Barbara, student leaders, student activists, student demonstrators have utilized a few choice spaces on campus as the locus for coming together, and that includes, and is not limited to, the Eternal Flame. It's a very unique monument and is located very much in the center of campus in a lot of different ways. Many who are familiar with campus will know that it is adjacent to El Centro, which is a hub of student activism and student activity just behind, just to the east side of the library. And between El Centro and the Eternal Flame, this kind of area is not necessarily widely known, but for student leaders and student activists, because of the symbolism of the monument itself, the Eternal Flame itself, honoring the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, as well as President John Kennedy and Bobby Kennedy, it really came to be a focus and a symbol of achievement over struggle, of achievement over hardship. And regardless of of what the issue was, whether it be commemorating the birthday of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, or in response to atrocities with regards to the development of and the evolution of Black Lives Matter, to graduate students who are demonstrating for equal pay, for their rights as employees of the university, a host of different issues and movements have found a home in that place, in that centralized location on campus, and it continues to serve in that capacity. I would even say also the Educational Opportunity Program is very closely knit and tied to the creation of the Eternal Flame, as well as El Centro, as well as all of the ethnic studies departments. All of these things, all of this movement for social justice and social change are all very much intertwined with one another. And the fact that there is an Eternal Flame, even though there have been some challenges on keeping it truly an eternal flame, which we are working through, the fact that that is there is truly a very significant symbol for keeping the light, holding the torch high, and moving always forward to the light, always striving upwards and onwards towards the light. And as director of the Educational Opportunity Program, it is my honor, in fact I believe it even my charge, to really make sure that not only does that flame stay lit and the history stay embedded and rooted in that place, but also that we make sure that entities like the Educational Opportunity Program or the Black Studies Department or the Center for Black Studies and Research or El Centro or Chicano Studies, all these things, all these entities kind of work together to make sure that we hold and cherish these spaces for what they mean for our legacy and the history of our campus and our society as a whole.
My name is Ralph Armbruster Sandoval. I'm a professor and also the chair of the Department of Chicana and Chicano Studies. It's a real pleasure to share some reflections and memories about the Eternal Flame. I came onto campus in 1998, which was 4 years after a really crucial hunger strike that Chicano Latino students engaged in. They had a series of demands that in some ways were linked back to 1968. About racism on campus, that black students took over North Hall in October of 1968. That was a movement that was primarily led by black students, but Chicano students, white students, and others participated in those actions back in that era. Chicano students also held a historic conference at Francisco Torres, a dorm called El Plan de Santa Barbara, which led to the establishment of Chicano Studies in 1970. Our department basically came out of this black-led movement. It's very important to emphasize that in terms of our politics today. But by 25 years later, after the department was created, it was still very small, it was really weak, they didn't really have a lot of professors. The number of Chicano Latino students on campus was just about 10%. And so the students undertook this dramatic action, and they met at the Eternal Flame because it was a safe space. People had gathered there for generations to plan social justice actions, obviously around the revered leaders and martyrs like John Kennedy, Robert Kennedy, and Martin Luther King Jr. And so they met there and they planned out this action, the very first formative moments of it. And a couple of months later then they enacted this action. They went on hunger strike for 10 days. One of the things that came out of this was more professors were hired in our department. I was hired as a result of this sacrificial action. There was a doctoral program created in Chicano Studies, first ever, and the number of Chicano Latino students has risen dramatically, I think, over the years, last quarter century, to about 30% today. So it was really pivotal what they did, quote, back in the day, benefited me personally, but I think the entire community, the whole campus, benefited because these students were taking on racism that affected all students, yes, Chicano Latino students, but all students on campus were being affected, and it really moved the campus forward.
I am also a member of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated Mu Kappa chapter here at UC Santa Barbara. And several years ago, when I actually wasn't physically on campus, around 1998, the brothers of Alpha Phi Alpha decided to do something commemorative to honor the birthday and the legacy of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and the idea blossomed into what they became a silent march, starting on one end of campus in front of Cheeto Hall, the administrative building, and then proceeding down campus through the arbor, which has historically, over the past maybe 10, 15 years or so, really been a hub of student activity. And then turning right towards Isla Vista and having a reception or a speaker or an event in front of Building 434, which when it started was where the Educational Opportunity Program and the Women's Center were located. It's since evolved to have a different destination, which also included, to culminate the end of the march, which also included the Multicultural Center, as well as other parts of campus in and around the University Center or Historic Plaza. In more recent years, working with the Santa Barbara Martin Luther King Committee, who had historically for years had events and a march up State Street on the weekend celebrating Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday. We were able to kind of build a bridge between UC Santa Barbara students and the downtown efforts with an effort that came to be known as Walk With Us. And through this, we were able to do something I think we've been talking about, our community's been talking about doing, which is really kind of moving beyond the silos in which we tend to operate. There's a downtown, there's community college, there's UC Santa Barbara, there's Goleta, and really trying to kind of build a stronger network there. And with the Brothers of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated continually doing and having an event, a commemorative event, it seemed a very natural fitting for the downtown Martin Luther King Jr. Committee to connect, and that connection point was the Eternal Flame. And also, it should be mentioned as well that there were several other entities on campus and in the surrounding community that were also a part of it, including but not limited to the Educational Opportunity Program, the Multicultural Center, the Center for Black Studies Research, the Black Studies Library, which is now kind of considered the Ethnic Studies Library, as well as the UCSB Alumni Association, the Department of Black Studies, as well as several other academic departments in the areas, and the Office of the Vice Chancellor for Student Affairs. So there was a lot of coming together around the commemoration of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, which continues on to this day.
The Eternal Flame was a gift to the school from UCSB class of 1968-69. The flame symbolizes the ideals of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., President John F. Kennedy, and Senator Robert F. Kennedy. The gift also signifies the activism of Black students and their increased awareness of the needs and the demands of the community at UCSB. This activism inspired the development of the Department of Black Studies, Chicano Studies, and eventually Women's Studies. The flame was turned off in 1985 due to the fuel crisis. At the urging of the American Peace Movement organizer David Crockett Williams, the flame was lit again in 1987 by the mayors of Santa Barbara and Yalta to promote better understanding between the United States and the Soviet Union. In 1990, the Eternal Flame was relit with the Hiroshima Peace Flame on the UCSB campus. In recent years, and community groups alike have gathered at the Eternal Flame to commemorate Dr. King and in the name of peace and nonviolence. The Martin Luther King Jr. Committee of Santa Barbara desires to bring lasting attention to the Eternal Flame. We would like the Eternal Flame to be embraced by those on the campus and in the community as a whole, as a reminder of these three champions for peace: John F. Kennedy, Robert Kennedy, and Dr. Martin Luther King. With this goal in mind, we collaborated with campus groups to create Walk With Us as a part of our annual MLK holiday celebration. With sincerest appreciation and on behalf of the Martin Luther King Jr. Committee, thank you, Chancellor Yang, and to all in the campus community and beyond, who have worked to ensure that this honored symbol is truly eternal.